Welcome everyone to a new episode of Roll Call. We are here today for episode 8, season 1. And we have with us today Professor Anupam Das, who's been an esteemed member of the IIMK community for the past 10 years. Before I introduce my guest tonight, just a little bit about myself. I'm Kamalika Gangoly from PGP 15, and I'm a management consultant with Deloitte Consulting. So if you've not had the chance to attend one of his classes, Professor Anupam Das teaches business communication at IIMK, and he's held numerous administrative positions also. I have had the good fortune to interact with him both inside the classroom as well as outside. And I've also been treated to lovely Bengali food at his residence on campus. So without further ado, let me welcome Professor Anupam Das. Good evening, sir, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you, Kamalika, and thank you all for inviting me here, to give me this opportunity to interact with many with whom I may not have had the opportunity to directly contact. So hopefully, I'll be able to re-establish that connection once again. Thank you.
Great. So for all of you who are joining us live today, we'll be spending the first 30 to 40 minutes talking to sir about his journey at IIM Kozhikode, his interest in the subject of business communication. We cannot not talk about COVID, so we definitely want to get his opinion on how business communication is changing in this new normal. And then after that, we will be taking questions from the audience in the last about 15 to 20 minutes. So if you have a question, just drop it in the comment section and we will come back and try and answer as many questions as we can towards the end of the session. So, sir, rewinding a little bit, let's talk about you, who is a trained linguist, how you found your calling to teach MBA students business communication as a subject.
Honestly, I never thought that I would landed up in a business school or management school. That was certainly not my wildest dream. However, as I was about to complete my PhD at Indiana University, I was looking for jobs, and both in the US and India. And in one fine day, a friend of mine shared a picture of something that's called, the title was The Campus on Heaven. And I thought this was something like, you get to receive a lot of those forwards and all. I didn't pay much attention, but there was something about this campus that's actually caught my attention. And I thought, well, if I were to teach in a college or university, this is going to be. And then I did Google it, and then I read about IIM Kozhikode. Honestly, I didn't know there is a place called Kozhikode, and now I can't pronounce it, Then I found that, it is actually Calicut that is also pronounced, written as that. Then I tried to think that, I'm a linguist. Of course, I was not into formal linguistics, meaning not into, although I did, phonetics, phonology, syntax, and all those things, and I love them. But my core interest was computer-mediated communication, meaning human-to-human interaction, through this technology, be it Zoom, email, blog, or social media. And I found that, there was a lot of overlap between what I did, as my PhD topic and, the things that are being taught in business school. And those things can be linked, It was actually developed much late, I would not say I thought about it, but it just, it just came up organically as I was exploring the job market. And then, I was actually I was teaching at Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. But honestly, it was, some sort of, I was a bit disappointed there because I didn't get to teach what I loved to. So I was looking for more job opportunities, and that's when I applied here and I got a call, which was a pleasant surprise. And it all started there, and I landed up in business school. And it so happened that, PGP 15 was my first guinea pig. It was my first intellectual child, that way, if I may call that. And it so happened 2 months before I was scheduled to start teaching, my co-instructor, Professor Srinivasan, who used to teach managerial communication. That time it was to be called managerial communication, MC. Right? She left, and I was asked to teach all 5 sections. And everybody, including my senior colleagues, asked me not to take that challenge, because it's going to be really daunting. And I said, well, I could do it, let me do it. And I did it, although, at the end of the 5th session every day, I would be completely disoriented. But then the students like you all helped me to, regain my power and enthusiasm. And I would be back again with full energy in the next class. So that's how it all began.
So great. So, like most of us, you have also fallen for the beautiful campus and the charm that IIMK has. That's how you kind of got into IIMK. Now, in terms of business communication as a subject, do you think it is an overhyped subject as part of the MBA curriculum? And if yes, then why is that so? But if no, how really do we make sure that the importance of that subject is communicated or highlighted to the students, especially some of who probably come from engineering backgrounds, and between physics and chemistry, they've probably never had the scope to learn business communication as a subject.
Well, no, business communication is certainly not an overhyped subject, Although, I have heard some people saying this, if you communicate well, you can get things done, right? I think that's an overhyped statement. No, but at the same time, the importance of communication cannot be denied in managerial roles, and there are 4 aspects. The way I see communication, it's all about activating your 5 senses to make sense of your world, right? To feel everything, and so as and when you do that, you really can make sense of your, your outside world. As we need to really understand that how I interact with myself, that is what we call intrapersonal communication. And then how we interact personal and the wider community. Now, having said that, a lot of people do not pay much attention to the importance of communication. In both in management and in business in general, right? In communication, in business communication and managerial communication, they probably would also be successful in their personal life. Something like, many of you probably have had attended my session, where I show small videos to show the importance of communication. Students decode the message and all, and then come to a conclusion. So, here I would like to filter copy. Let's watch that.
Sure.
Together.
I think we're missing a little bit of with that video. We'll try and see if the team can help us run that video again. It's not able to hear any sound for that.
Okay. Let's try that again.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened, but sir, I think we can circle back if the team at the back end can fix it for us. But let's come back to your what we were talking about, which was essentially
Yes, it
MBA
seems like
subject. Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of lag at your end. Not able to hear you. Sorry, everyone. We're just trying to make sure that we have good connection from Sir's end. He's just trying to reconnect. So apologies for the delay here. All right, great. We have you back, sir.
All
Okay, great.
right.
So I think
Yeah.
as soon as we started talking about MBA being an business communication being an overhyped subject, everything kind of went off. So probably the voodoo alarm
Yeah.
is not allowing us to call.
E- even the internet even the internet could not take that, said like, what are you
Right.
talking about, everybody knows the importance of managerial communication, but it's actually there are two things, everybody knows the importance of managerial communication, but whether everybody really practices that is the question. Right, and as and when we start working, then gradually we realize the importance of it, But, as you see, if you do not practice it before, you cannot be a performer on the stage just overnight. Right. So, so how do you practice it? Does that mean, only when you start working, you can be good at business communication? And if you remember, in fact, I have always drawn that parallels between, home as an organization, in a small unit of organization and business. In fact, there are both structural and functional parallelism. How you perform at home and how you communicate at home has a lot to do how you perform and communicate at work too. If you are unable to resolve conflict at home, if you are, in fact, give you an example, if I am a very protective father, right, and that may have some consequences the way I deal with my subordinates there. right? So maybe my child is my favorite one, so whenever my child comes to me asking for something, I give her and protect her, or she come back play from the play, complaining about another friend without listening to the other side. I go and bombarded the other person, other child and all those things. And similarly, you notice probably, there is if I'm the boss at work, I would have similar kind of habits. If I have some favorite, subordinates or colleagues and all those things, I would try to protect them at any cost, even when I'm supposed to be inclusive. I do not listen to the other side. So those things, so I think it is not necessarily that, you have to when you study managerial communication, and understand the concepts, really well, and then practice it, not just theory. But if you do not practice it, at home in our peers, among your peers and social circles, we won't be able to really do well in our business communication at work.
That's nice. And now that we're talking about home and how we practice, or how our interactions at home impact how we interact outside. When you joined IIMK, you were not married, you were single. Since then, you got married. Now you're talking about your daughter, so now also a parent. How has your journey or your progress in your personal life impacted your teachings or your understanding of the subject per se?
Right. As I mentioned about, your personal life would have a lot of things to do the way you conduct yourself at work. So yes, when I started my teaching career at IIMK, I was single, and so PGP 15 got my undivided attention. So I didn't have to come back home on a particular time to be with the family and all. Not that I'm complaining, because if I'm married, I must have certain responsibility towards my family, and if I'm a parent, I must have certain responsibility towards my kid. But yes, what happens, as a single person, teacher, I was able to spend a lot of time outside the classroom, and that is the time when I was the chair of students affairs. So we did a lot of things together, including food festival. If you remember that, initiated that that program, which was a big hit. I guess a lot of people came together, even the faculty and staff, family, and we had great time together. And also in the next year or maybe year after that, I don't remember exactly, we even had a Speak Mackie, state event, where we got a lot of artists to perform, and it was great. And there were other activities as well. So I could spend a lot of time, and because I spent a lot of time with the students outside the classroom, I kind of understood their psyche, their expectations, their life goals, their dreams, and when I understand that, I can connect with them even in the classroom in a better way. Right, the examples I might draw. In fact, in many cases, it so happened the students, in fact, shared many videos, because I keep screening videos and all this. Say, sir, can you also watch this one? And that becomes also part of the classroom experience. So teaching for me is a co-creation of knowledge. The students bring something and I bring something, and together we create. And that has been the journey throughout. Not just with PGP 15, 16, 17, and even the latest PGP 23. However, as I, I had other roles to play at home. I had to consciously, make sure that I make that work-life balance. I would take off particular time, so that I don't miss out, an opportunity to play with my daughter or be with my wife and daughter, having evening tea. Because these things are very important, because unless and until we know how to respect the other family members and their expectation, right, we cannot do justice at work either. And that is when, as a boss, probably I would expect my subordinates or other colleagues to spend extra hours, without even acknowledging that, they have families, they too have, life too. That work-life balance, if I, as a, as a faculty do not teach and practice, the students would not know that. They might complain, sir, you don't spend as much time with us. But then as they move on in their life, they would also know that it's important, for them also to follow that, so that, yes, as a bachelor, I am not responsible for not looking after or being there with other members of the family, because that's you have different set of expectations. But as I move on into different phases of life, I need to be ready and practice that in life. And when students see that, they might also think that my actions speak much louder than my words, and they sometimes they get induced by that. Hopefully they do, so that they practice at home, and you don't end up spending extra hours at work, sometimes for nothing. It's not necessarily always we have a lot of work to finish, and all those things. Well, of course, you have a demanding project and all those things, you do have to, and we do that too. Even at weekends, we do teach, and take part in other activities, administrative. But it can't be 365 days, 24/7. That's not feasible.
Great. And then before you got into IIMK, you spent close to 5 years doing your doctoral study in the US. You've also been there as a faculty outside of India. Has any of that exposure changed or impacted your research, your knowledge about the subject, or even your teaching methods per se?
Oh yes, yeah, greatly. I think my experience abroad, especially in the US and the UK, have shaped my personal as well as professional life, greatly. I could give you a few examples, So as a doctoral student, I lived with one Japanese roommate, one Indian, one American. We had a large house. Each one of us had a room and all those things. And the kitchen was there was always a multi-cuisine and, some multilingual experiences. And, one of my roommates was a, swimmer. He was in fact world record holder. The other one, was a mathematician. He was doing PhD in mathematics, and I thought he used to solve a lot of problems. And he said, no, it is nothing about problems. Of course, we solve problems, but not numerical ones. It is all about philosophy. In fact, mathematics that way is a part of liberal arts. That's when I knew. It is not science. So. And of course, I'm a linguist, and although I'm a linguist, I was interested in, social informatics and social media, and, my PhD was on Oxford. So in fact, my living experience in the US has been very, very diverse, multi-ethnic, multilingual, and all those things, so that gave me opportunity to negotiate, interact with people from different cultures, and at the same time, when I would walk into a classroom, there are people from Europe, Latin America, Africa, China, of course, India, and whatnot, So it's a mini United Nation there, right? So as our teachers would have to be extra cautious to bring examples that would appeal to everyone, not just the front runner, but also the backbenchers. And in fact, these terms, of course, even in fact do not make sense. There is no front runner and backbenchers, in a way. But everyone has a different space of learning. But how to accommodate that space of learning in one classroom, in about an hour and a half, where people from diverse cultural and linguistic background can make sense. Right, and I used to see that my Chinese or Taiwanese friends would come to the class with their digital dictionary where they would record their sessions, and then after the class gets over, they would go to the library and then translate that from English to Chinese, Mandarin in this case, and do that. And yet they did fantastic job. This is not the one thing that in communication too, a lot of people tend to think that if you speak good English, meaning sophisticated with sophisticated accent and polished English, you are a good communicator. If that was the case, then Charlie Chaplin would have been the worst communicator. He had any dialogues in his films, right? So it is not about, speaking beautifully. It is about understanding the intent of the person and accordingly respond in a way that brings both people through the same platform, and they're able to get things done and have a pleasant coexistence, right? So this is something that I learned. The other thing that I learned, so the kind of research the people, the faculties, both in the US and in the UK do are way ahead of our time. One example I could give you. So we were my first exam assignment, was a term paper. And when I submitted, I thought, I spent hours working on that, and it was a good, very well presented one. But my advisors threw that, saying that, what is this? In fact, I was accused of plagiarism, and I didn't know, in fact, that, I was actually making notes, drawing from different books and all those things. She says, where is your analysis? Where is your word? Right? So that's one experience, and then we had to choose the projects, that we really had to spend a lot of time and original thoughts analyzing that and come up with an original report. It cannot be copied from internet or books or anywhere else, even if you paraphrase them. That's one. The second, that was eye-opener for me. In a class of content analysis, there was a Korean friend of mine who said, he wanted to analyze pornographic films. How pornography is, received by men and women. In different cultures. So we are all excited, like, oh, we got to see a lot of porns, in the classroom and all. But as soon as his presentation starts, it was such an eye-opener, the kind of analysis they do, saying that, what happens when most of the pornographic films are made from male perspective, there is no female perspective, or very few. And what happens, who are the consumers, what happens, when kids get exposed, different kinds of analysis. And I thought, so there was absolutely, no fuss about, analyzing pornography. If that actually feeds people, we must understand in what way, right? They feed, and, if it does any good, and it's not that anything he was talking about that, it is only bad things, he does talk about the positive impact of pornography, but as well as the negative impact of that. So similarly, my recent, in fact, studies was on disinformation, which is about misinformation and fake news and all those things. There have been robotics, how robots interact with human beings, and in a pandemic situation, these are the things, and they bring their research and their studies to the classroom, share that with the students, and students get super excited because I think the students that we interact with, are, they are part of this digital culture. And how to combine their personal life with this digital culture and work. Sometimes they are way ahead of us. And honestly speaking, because their experience in the digital platform probably is much more advanced than mine. So when I talk about that, the students also share that information, and I have experienced that in Oxford too, and in Cornell, so those places, so I think the kind of topics, that discussed are very futuristic, not really, looking back what happened. I think historical perspectives are important, but only, tying ourselves to the historical perspective and, basking in the glory of the past doesn't necessarily help us. And in fact, that is one of the problems of case study method, I believe. Case study by default is historical, in nature, right? So whereas I think we need to also have some sort of experiential learning, which would be futuristic, so that as managers, as future leaders, you could be thinking ahead of time. So these are something I try to incorporate in my teachings here as well, as many of you might notice. In fact, in my recent times, I incorporate how to be a good storyteller, how to interpret images, how to interpret sounds, and give students the freedom that they could do anything that they want to within, of course, a framework of the course outline and all those things. So that has been extremely good experience, and I think I would always love to keep that contact alive, because the more you travel, and interact with people outside your own academic community and from different spheres, the more you learn, and the more you learn, your students benefit from your either classroom interactions or even outside the classroom interactions.
Great. That seems like a very interesting journey, sir. And you've touched upon some very specific terminology. We've talked about computer-mediated communication. Um, and we're pretty much 30 minutes into this discussion, so I kind of have to talk about the new normal, coming back to the present. Given your study in this area, sir, let me ask you a broader question. With the way business communication has changed, all our communications nowadays are happening on Zoom, including our, chai sessions and our gossip sessions that we have with our colleagues or any sort of, engagement with the client. All of that now is on Zoom. So, what is your take on this subject?
Well, you see, technology is neither good nor bad. It all depends how we use them, right? If we can use them judiciously, it is going to be great. But some of us get addicted to technology. In fact, I was just talking to a colleague of mine. He says, when I go to work, I get things done. I don't get things done pretty much. As compared to if I work from home. I said, what could be the reason? Because at home there could be more distraction. He said, no, that's actually opposite. If I'm at work, I probably would browse a lot of internet, and do things that probably doesn't require my attention. But if I'm at home, I would not probably, do something that would disturb others, so I would complete my work particularly at that time and then do other things. I think one of the problems that I see with this technology and not technology and the COVID, a lot of people are saying that, there is no social space and all those things. I think, space for me is mental than physical. Of course, physical space does play an important role. How you conduct yourself, what are your areas of interest? Can I don't feel lonely even when I'm alone, because I am occupied with many other things. Either I play tabla or I paint something, even if I'm not good at it, or do gardening, do a little bit of music listening and all those things, active ways of spending time. And reflective, reflect on oneself, what I have done in the past, how I could improve on that. Those things are very important. So as the COVID situation has changed the way we used to interact, well, not completely, but at least in a significant way, that we are unable to go out and have a coffee with friends and all those things. They have that thing have social interaction in a physical space has a very positive impact on mental wellness. However, in the absence of that, the way we could cope up, of course, I'm not talking about people who are who need psychological attention or psychiatric attention. They must go and seek specific specialized attention and all those things. But many of us probably do not even have that. Yet, we feel sometimes depressed. It's not a chronic chronic depression or anything. It is like situational one. But in order to overcome that, if we pick up a guitar, if we learn to spend some time reading a book, ask a friend to recommend. In fact, many of you probably would find it difficult to complete reading a book because the reading habit has gone completely. So that is because of this our addiction to this technology. It is not that technology is bad, it's the way we use technology that will determine our psychological well-being as well as our interpersonal relationship with people. If I need to talk to Kamalika, I would, rather than WhatsApping, and one fine evening I'll just pick up the phone and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? By listening to that voice, it changes my moods, it makes my day. So I typically do that, of course, WhatsApp is also important, but, I use also WhatsApp for even interaction purpose, classroom interaction purpose, as many of you also have experience, and I'm working on that, So I think one of the things that, technology can be used, for a betterment of human being, but not for destructive purposes. And many of us do use that. I wish I had the time to show you this video called Half Day. But if we are running out of time, we could share that video.
We can definitely try and play it. Team, can we have the video?
Yeah, I guess yes.
I will ask about that, but तेरे भाई ने स्मार्ट वर्क करके उसको कंप्लीट कर लिया। जॉब लिस्ट भी डन है आज का। मैं निकल रहा हूँ अभी थोड़ी देर में। तू
संध्या से मिलने जा रहा है?
हाँ यार, वो आई एम जस्ट कैचिंग अप विद फॉर अ ड्रिंक। आज मैच भी है ना, लकी बॉय। मैं सोच रहा हूँ पहले जाके मैच देखता हूँ थोड़ी देर, फिर वो आएगी तो we'll just hang out a little bit.
चल ब्रो,
चल
अपन तो रात ही हैं।
चल मैं निकलता हूँ।
और आज फिर से हाफ डे?
इधर
क्या हुआ?
टाइम क्या हुआ है?
एक्सक्यूज मी?
तेरी घड़ी में टाइम क्या हुआ है?
6:30।
इसकी घड़ी तो चल रही है यार, मुझे लगा घड़ी खराब हो गई।
समझा नहीं?
मैच कमजोर है।
नहीं तो?
तू सुट्टा ब्रेक पे गया था ना अभी?
हाँ गया था तो?
हाँ तभी।
टाइम शीट देख लेगा भी, हर रोज ऑफिस से लास्ट मैं ही जाता हूँ।
आई डोंट केयर तू फर्स्ट आता है या लास्ट जाता है, आई डोंट केयर। ठीक है,
पॉइंट पे काम है बहुत।
पॉइंट ये है माय डियर कोलीग, इफ समवन कम्स टू वर्क एट 9 a.m. and finishes their work for the day and wants to leave at 6 p.m., then that's 9 hours of me slogging my ass here. 9 hours out of the 24 hours of my day that I have given to this company. 9 precious hours of my life that I'll never get back. 9 hours of slogging is what I'm paid for. Nothing more, nothing less. अब प्रॉब्लम ये है कि तुम जैसे लोग रात भर ऑफिस में पड़े रहते हो, ऐसे काम करते हुए दिखाई देते हो, जिससे कि एक इंप्रेशन क्रिएट हो जाता है कि यार ये तो बड़ा हार्डवर्किंग एम्प्लॉय है, ये बड़ा सीरियस है, कमिटेड है, रात भर बैठ के काम करता है। कुछ लोग तो ऐसे ही फ्री एसी और वाईफाई के लिए पड़े रहते हैं। ये अपना सतीश, ये रात भर बैठ के फोन देखता है। यहाँ पे 9 बजे उसका काम खत्म हो जाता है, लेकिन मेल डालेगा रात के 1:30 बजे, ताकि बॉस को लगे ओके ये रात के 2 बजे तक बैठ के काम कर रहा था, बड़ा हार्डवर्किंग है। ये सब हार्डवर्किंग है, ये सब कमिटेड है। हम लोग जो सुबह से बैठकर फोकस के साथ बिना किसी इंटरप्शन के, बिना किसी ब्रेक के काम करके शाम के 6 बजे निकलने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, हमको क्या सुनने को मिलता है? हाफ डे। क्या बात है, हाफ डे जा रहे हो आज? तो क्या हाफ डे? कैसा हाफ डे? तुमसे कोई आके पूछता है कि जो 15 घंटे काम करके जा रहे हो उसमें तुमने कितने ब्रेक लिए? 30 सिगरेट ब्रेक्स, उसके बाद चाय ब्रेक, टॉयलेट ब्रेक, लंच ब्रेक, यस्टरडेज मैच एनालिसिस ब्रेक, हीटेड पॉलिटिकल डिबेट्स वाली ब्रेक, जूसी ऑफिस गॉसिप वाली ब्रेक, ये ब्रेक, लौड़ा लहसुन ब्रेक, सारे ब्रेक मिला के 9 घंटों का काम तुम 12-15 घंटों का बना देते हो। व्हाट काइंड ऑफ एफिशिएंसी इज दैट? ऐसे इनएफिशिएंट लोगों के साथ हम क्या करते हैं? सर पे बिठा लेते हैं। अरे रे रे रे, 2 बजे तक काम करता है यार, ये तो प्रमोशन देते हैं इसको। ये तो 4 बजे तक काम करता है, इसको अगले साल ना लंदन भेजेंगे, ऑन साइट भेजेंगे। Why? Why is staying late at work considered a virtue? Why are we rewarding and glorifying it? और जो efficient लोग हैं, जो टाइम पे काम करके खत्म करके निकलना चाह रहे हैं, what do we do with them? We penalize them. We judge them. We make them feel guilty for their choices to leave on time. Why? Who is to blame for this? You. You and an office culture that has gone unchecked for decades now. चूतिया जॉब। तू 18 घंटे काम करता है, तुझे लगता है तूने बहुत बड़ा तीर मार लिया क्या? हैं? ये कंपनी वालों ने तेरी यहाँ पे एक फोटो लगा दी, स्टार परफॉर्मर ऑफ द मंथ, एम्प्लॉय ऑफ द मंथ। तू बहुत खुश हो गया ना? तो अंदर से यहाँ पे जिसका फोटो लगता है ना, उसका सबसे बड़ा चूतिया कटा है, क्योंकि उसको ये तक नहीं पता कि इस क्यूबिकल के बाहर भी एक दुनिया है जो बहुत जरूरी है मेरे लिए। When I leave this work and go out, there are n number of things that I want to do. I might have a wife, a family, a friend, whoever I want to meet. I might want to go to the pub with my friends and watch a game or play a game myself. Maybe I want to go for a run, read a book, whatever the fuck I want to do in my time, in me time. And I have every goddamn right to do that. तू मुझे बता, ये ऑफिस स्किल के अलावा और क्या आता है तुझे? क्या आता है? गिटार बजा लेता है? हाँ? कुकिंग, फिशिंग, ट्रैकिंग, कभी कुछ किया है ऐसे? अपने बच्चे के साथ कभी वॉक पे गया है? आइसक्रीम खाया है उसके साथ? क्या आता है? ऑफिस में गांड चाटने के अलावा क्या आता है तुझे? कब करेगा ये सब जरूरी नहीं है। अब तू बोलेगा यार ये सब तो मैं वीकेंड पे करूंगा। हाँ, किसने बोला है ये? क्या जिंदगी सिर्फ संडे को जीने के लिए है? कौन सी कंपनी ने बोला ये कि मंडे टू सैटरडे मरते रहो और सिर्फ लाइफ जो है संडे को जियो? कहां लिखा है? कितने साल का है तू अभी? 30 का ना? 10 साल बाद 40 का हो जाएगा, उसके बाद 50 का, और फिर देखते देखते ना ईएमआई और बिल्स भरते भरते एक दिन तू मर जाएगा। किसी को घंटा फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा। जिस दिन मर रहा होगा तू बैठ के सोचेगा क्या किया यार मैंने? कीबोर्ड के साथ हिलाया और कुछ नहीं। मुझे नहीं मरना ऐसे। So I'm going to go right now and enjoy the other half day of my life.
So, yeah, you kind of got the idea what I was getting in. It's not necessarily always the problem with the organizations expecting you to do more. I think, there is something within us also. When we do not have reactive interest to follow, we find it in a reactive way of spending time, either going on social media, just if someone has posted something, we have to react on that. How about, posting something proactively, and doing something, something very creative, So the creativity and this aspect, has to be awakened because there is a child in each one of us, but sometimes the society kills the child, sometimes we ourselves do that, So we have to really be cautious in, not to kill that child in us and, awaken the child. It is not killed, it is just probably temporarily, not active, so it's latent there. We need to just awaken that child in us.
Right, sir. And we're talking about the importance of friends and family, and how that interaction is important for every person. Given the current situation we're in, actually meeting your family and friends is, it's actually pretty much scary, and you're asked not to do it. So in that scenario, what are some of the impacts that can happen, like to an individual? What are some of the coping mechanisms that one can use where you're not with your family, your friends, you're probably having very limited communications, or even for that matter, that physical contact with them. How can people cope with this kind of situation?
Right. Yeah. I think, see, as we talk about communication and behavior in general, right, there was no, there is no one particular form that, we should all align to. Because by default, we are unique. We are born unique, right? One of the problems that happen both at home as well as at work, that when we expect others to behave exactly the way we do, we expect them to be the mirror image of us. And when, they don't conform to our expectation, we find, difficulty in dealing with them. It happens between husband and wife, between siblings, between parents, and the kids, and it happens between boss and the subordinate. How do you deal with that? And now the fact that both home and office, there is no boundary. Right, so it's sometimes stress level goes up, and even at work, your full time, domestic health as well as your full time, worker. Yes, Now I see it different way. Depends on how skilled are we. Right, for example, if you don't know, if you have never done, if you have never cooked anything, or if you don't enjoy cooking, you would find it extremely, taxing. Or if you have not cleaned your dishes or wiped the floor, mopped the floor, even if you have not done that, that doesn't mean that you can't. It's all about willingness. If it is home, how do you expect your home to be? right? The way, see, the difference over there. A lot of people actually boast about their promotion at work, the kind of workload they're getting there. They even in fact boast about their life out of a suitcase, because they have a lot to do. If they have to go to office even early morning, they boast about it. But the same person complains when he or she has to do some extra work at home. I don't understand why. Is it not home? I mean, one of my students recently, in an executive program, said that we should not bring our personal life to work. Because there must be a distinction between personal and professional life. But my question to those people, then why do you send work home? Even when even before COVID situation, right? Even you are at home, you are attending calls from home. You are entering, work is entering your private life. But if I'm having trouble at home, and if I do not have friends, or co-workers, or my boss is not, really empathetic to my, emotional moods or, emotional needs and all those things, then, I don't necessarily work only for the organization. I also work for myself. Right, so that balance has to be done, right? So if you expect me not to bring my personal life to work, so please also follow the same. Don't send work home. Right, whereas you see that sometimes people don't respect your personal time, if not private. You are receiving call 10 o'clock, if not receiving emails, and WhatsApp. So there has to be some policy. In Scandinavian countries, if you go beyond the stipulated period of time of work, you are actually looked down upon. That you're not a smart worker, therefore you're slogging there, right? And beyond certain time, it is personal time, and please don't interfere. But probably we are in a country where we cannot negotiate, because there are so many, and so therefore, it is. I think we are misused that way, sometimes unduly, and we can't even negotiate with that, and therefore there's a lot of stress. Of course you want to go up the ladder, but not at the cost of your personal life and family life, because at the end you realize organization doesn't stay with you, your family does. Right, so, and in fact, most of you probably would change your organization every 2 to 3 years, if not faster than that. So having said that, organization does matter. You must involve, it does matter, what is the duration of your service there. As long as you are there, you must make sure that you are heard, you are respected, acknowledged, and if not, you must ensure that they do. Not by shouting, but to ensure through your work, and there will be points people would have to acknowledge your contribution, and that's when you have your say. So I think it's important to bring that balance, and when someone asks not to bring you the personal matter, ask them not to send work home.
Right, sir, and I think that's great advice to a lot of us right now who've probably forgotten the boundary between personal time and office time, and you're probably like waking up and just going to the laptop when you're going back to sleep, as soon as you're done with work. So, that definitely is good advice for folks out there. So, sir, we've kind of, talked about your learning, your journey, your, like I would say, your personal journey, how that ties into your professional journey. We typically don't talk about failures, right? Because we are always used to talk about how people always boast about their good performances. But having said that, have you faced failure, in your journey in these last 10 years? And then, if you have, what has been your mechanism to kind of get out of that and start moving forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, failure is, I guess we only see the success, as you mentioned, right? But behind our, one success, there are at least 50 failures. But those failures are the pillar of our success, right? Because every time you fail, and if we have the strength and the, right attitude, we bounce back saying that, well, I must have done something wrong, rather than putting the blame on the other person, saying that, I need to do better, but then, the introspection comes over there. I give you an example over there, two examples. And when in my teaching career, one session that did not go well at all, I was taking part in an MDP session where I had to teach something on the corporate etiquette. And I thought, why would people come to IIM to learn corporate etiquette, where you can actually watch some films and, probably learn those skills? Because this is skills. For learning skills, you probably don't need to come to IIMK, right? Because Institute of Higher Education is for training of mind, but not about learning facts or the skills that way. So in doing so, in asking them to, in explaining them why we should follow certain etiquettes and how that helps improve our, the health of our network. I started showing some clippings from Pretty Woman. So after a few minutes, I didn't notice it, but there was some awkward silence. The students were like, looking out through the window, or even if they're, watching the film, occasionally, and all those things. And so, but I couldn't figure out, what went wrong, why they were, and maybe I thought, maybe they're not interested in the film, or because of the accent, English accent, and all those things. But the next morning, I got an email from the coordinator asking that the students were extremely unhappy with my session because they felt insulted. And I said, in what way I insulted them? Because no one came up and spoke to me saying that, they felt insulted. They just left quietly. Then, there was a mail that explained why they felt insulted, because, there was some, scene in Pretty Woman, that was indicating of, this Julia Roberts was touching the private part of, Richard Gere, and then, the conversation goes on. So I think they perceived that, I was trying to teach them, explain them, they should not do such things, some things like that, which I could not perceive. So I actually, I took them as my PGP students who are more open, they would come up and, discuss these things, but, these are the set of students who come from a cultural background, which I could not anticipate, I couldn't anticipate their reactions and all those things. So initially, yes, I was a little upset, that they sent a nasty email and all those things. But that was a huge learning lesson that you cannot assume that each set of student will react exactly the way the previous set of student has done that. On the other hand, I recently taught a course called Public Speaking for Managers. So I approached the course in a very very traditional way, where I expected the students to come prepared to the class, and it was in term 6, and all of you know how term 6 is, right? Half of the class was placed and half of the class was not placed. So both are in a different platform. So they didn't want to really learn the way I wanted them to. So they came straightforward saying that this is not working for us. You need to do something. But I'm glad that, because I had that kind of connection with the students, that without seeking feedback, they gave me feedback that this is not, five sessions into the course, they came up with saying that you need to change. And I did bounce back and then came back with, with a different strategy, which, worked, to a great extent, So one thing that I make sure that, these failures, become the pillar of my success. I introspect, I come back and address them hopefully adequately, if not the same year. And I remember one more, because in my first year, I offered this course called Communication as Impression Management. My managerial communication was well received, but my CIM was not at all well received. So, but I did not give up. I worked on that. So next year it went better. And then it went better. But one thing that I follow, the principle that do not teach a course for 25 years, then you do not know the teacher in you is dead. So for 5 years, I teach a course, I drop that course, I try out a new one, and that's why, I don't teach, CIM, Communication as Impression Management anymore. I might teach it maybe even 5 years later, but now I came up with this course, which, was a very challenging experience, but I'm glad that I did that because I learned something. And I'm pretty sure, it will go better the next time I offer. that once again. So these are experiences. In terms of research also, there have been, when you submit your manuscript to journals, you get multiple rejections, but those rejections actually help you to rework on your manuscript, strengthen your arguments further, resubmit to another journals, and finally you get published. So do not, your spirit should not be dampened by this rejection or failure, but it's easier said than done. How to keep yourself, upbeat all the time. And I think that is when, if you actually learn to activate your five senses, cook something, if not for anybody else, for yourself. Treat yourself well. I'm not talking about being narcissist, but if you do not love yourself, you can't love others. Importance of loving yourself is very important. Saying for yourself, even if not for anybody else. But yes, of course, for somebody else too, because when you do for somebody else, this becomes very, very special. You find the joy in other person, and all. That's when this bonding happens. The strength, then both at work and as well at home. These are the things I call communication. So if you ask me to define communication, it's very hard for me. Communication is not only about activating five senses, but it's also about being creative. It's also showcasing your empathy. How when you speak. And also it is not only about being empathetic people. You also need to show your anger when you are angry. Do not suppress your anger for a longer period, because So I think I have shared this video with people that problem or the dangers that good boys and girls face in their life. If you always try to be good boys and girls, meaning pleasing your parents or bosses or your teachers and all, you'd often suppress your own desire, right? And there would be some sort of psychological stress in you. Right. When that happens, after a point, you feel like, you need to feel like screaming, so and all those things, So yes, be a good human being, but you don't have to be a good boy or good girl, good quote unquote, live your life at the same time, not only for yourself, but for others. But don't forget to live for yourself first. When you live for yourself, you become happy. Unless you are happy, you can't make other person happy. No matter what, it becomes very difficult. You then act. You can't continue to act 24/7, 365 days. That's very, very stressful. And a lot of times we bring this stress unknowingly. It is not that external factors. We always find, scapegoats. He's or she's, are causing stress. Sometimes the stress we create for ourselves because of our personality and all those things. I think we need to be more self-reflective, and when we find out our issues, and if even if it requires you to go and see a psychologist and psychiatrist, do not hesitate. It is important that we look after our well-being.
That's great, sir. Great advice. As we are close to wrapping up our session, sir, you brought about the topic of publication. You've recently published a book. Would you like to talk to us a little bit about
yeah. So it is all about the business communication, but as I approach business communication from very different perspectives, as those of you have attended my class, sometimes you are surprised that why you are not asked to read the textbook that were prescribed, right? I never asked you to read the textbook, but I think you're an adult. You'd read that at your own space if you feel like. So, the book is all about my, recently a colleague of mine asked me, how long did it take me to write that book? Of course, I'm not the sole author. I'm just one of the co-authors. So, I contributed 5 chapters. And my answer to that was, actual act of writing was a little over 3 months. But, the concepts, that I gathered, that actually was over 10 years of teaching experience, So every time I try out things, and as you know that, I don't hesitate to experiment with the students in my pedagogical journey. So all those became my part of my book, be it storytelling, be it computer-mediated communication, be it critical, crisis communication, and crisis communication, how you also look at from a domestic perspective. When you have a fight with your partner, how do you solve it? If you can't solve a fight with your own partner, I don't expect how you solve that with your colleague, So there are certain things that we need to really understand. But yes, there are cases where you probably cannot solve. Not every solution problem can be solved, right? It's not possible, right? Then you become superhuman being. You're no longer a human being. You are a monk, or you're a saint and all those things. But I think it is all about not putting your issue under the carpet. You need to be able to forget it, if not completely. It should go deeper into your memory, so that by each scratches, it should not just surface, so that you are at peace. So many of those things, including how to be attentive, how to, because see, speaking, reading and writing are something that typically a child is formally taught, but listening and paying attention to others are left to oneself. And this is something that I have also addressed, very closely, that how to be attentive, how to be mindful, because we are mostly very reactive people. But if we become proactive, meaning by default, if you love doing something, playing a music, like to act in a theater, or you want to paint something and all those things. These are something what I consider proactive things. When you do that, you will be completely immersed in that action, and you see that after you complete that, you feel a lot more energized, happy. And when you're happy, you in fact radiate that energy. There's an induction effect. People would automatically get attracted to you, and you help them, and things look better, and you perform better. You have a very pleasing coexistence. So, and even if you are alone, you would not feel suffocated there, because you're not necessarily alone. You are in touch with something else or somebody else, mentally. We need to train ourselves that way. So a few things I would advise or suggest my students to do. Pick up, follow a passion, actively. Be it music, painting, gardening, many things, cooking, even cleaning, could be very, passionate way of doing that, you can't travel now, but, whenever it is safe to travel, please do that. Read books, as much as possible, watch films, not just Hollywood or Bollywood, watch films that are, from regional languages. They bring a different world to us. One of the problems that I see, we are, heavily biased towards Hollywood. Watch foreign films, regional films, from Bhojpuri, Maithili, Tamil, Telugu, all those things. I used to miss those. The DD1 used to have this, regional films on every Sunday. There's some of the greatest films were screened, those days. I wish they bring that back. If not, I'm not sure if they do. But these films, and I watch a lot of short films that become part of my teaching experience. And thanks to my wife, who is a movie buff, and she actually supplies the sources, and she watches something and she says that this is something you might want to use in your next session and all those things. And my daughter, she continuously encourages me to do something, because the things that I do, the play and all those things, many of those things become part of my teaching experience at times, because I think the root of learning is same. The rate of learning might be different between adults and the children, so I think we need to always be in touch with kids, to awaken the kids in us, and we can do that.
Right, so that's a lot of good conversation. I know we are pretty much close to the hour, so thanks a lot again, sir, on behalf of the team. And it was a great opportunity also for me to connect back with you as well. So again, I hope for all of you who tuned in or who ends up watching this video later, do make sure that you're taking out the time to spend with yourself, that me time that Sir talked about, and also, Sir talked about how you need to make sure that you need to hold on to something, do something proactively. So yeah, that's really all for tonight. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks again, sir.
Thank you everyone for having me. It was a wonderful opportunity to reach out to all of you. And do send me a question, since we did not, we utilized even the Q&A session. See, when you have your professors speak, they don't just keep time of their, keep track of their time. But, we are in the digital era. So, if people have questions and contacts, please do, drop me a message, or give me a phone call. I would love to hear your voice. If you have anything, to talk to me, share with me, feel free to do that. I'll be very, very happy to reconnect with many of you. So stay well, stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
sir.